Welcome to Behind the Scenes at ID8 Studios. I'm Steve Sue with Crystal.
With Crystal Backey,
Yeah.
and we're here with Rquan.
How's it, guys?
Hey.
So we are very curious to know, how do you conduct a great interview? Because you're a journalist extraordinaire, and you've been doing this for like a long time.
A long time.
Almost centuries, right?
Not centuries, but a
Almost.
long time.
Yeah, a long
I'm
time.
a veteran, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds very simple, but the first thing you need to do is be prepared when you go into an interview, as much as you can.
Yeah.
TV news, sometimes you get thrown into a story, you may not have a chance to prepare, but if you're doing, a feature story, something you've been working on, do as much research as you can about this person.
What does research mean? Does that mean Googling people?
Sure, Googling the people, reading
Stalking them on
articles.
Instagram or something.
Well, not stalking.
Stalker.
Just knowing enough about the person, because you don't want to insult them by asking dumb questions.
Yeah.
I think the better questions you get, the better answers you get, which means you'll get a better story.
You don't want to leave the story on the table, right?
No.
I mean, you want to ask the question that everybody is thinking of too. You don't
Exactly.
want to miss it.
You're kind of like the middleman between the public and these people you're interviewing. So you do want to think, okay, what would the public want to know about this person? And ask those type of questions. And we were talking earlier about listening. Sometimes I would write down a set list of questions, but don't be so tight or focused just on those questions. Listen to what the person is saying to you, and that could often lead to a more interesting subject or even more questions. Yeah.
So you're currently a news anchor.
Right.
Do you do much interviewing in that capacity? Because I also know you've been reporting, or you've been a sports anchor for many years.
I do still do interviewing, because we'll often have live guests through Zoom, more often than in person. And like, for instance, this past week, Kilauea erupted again. So we had Ken Han from the Volcano Observatory on. So, we ask him questions on air. We're limited to about 3.5 minutes, so you want to have your questions to be fairly concise, get right to the point. What do the people need to know, and what should they know? So yes, so I still do interviewing.
What do you do for people that are like deer in the headlights? Because people that are like performers, like sports people, are pretty good on camera generally, right?
Okay.
They're kind of trained to be entertainers. They're effervescent by and large. But then you go to like Kilauea, and it could be a scientist, and they're like, oh, I don't know, this is not my space, right?
Yeah. I mean, as far as the interviewer or the people
Well, how do you
interviewing?
juice them up? How do you get what you need out of them?
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes it's difficult to do that. If some people are just better on camera than others. Again, referring to Ken, he's been on the media enough that he knows how to answer the questions. He has a good personality. He's not real dry and stuff like that. He's TV friendly, so that helps. If the person is just that dry, either we will cut his time, or we'll try to reframe our questions in a way that he feels more comfortable answering them, and try to go to what he feels good about talking about.
How do you do that? How do you reframe? Like, what's a new way of asking?
Gosh. Well, I mean, again, you don't want to get too scientific on these questions, because then you're going to alienate your viewing audience too. But, if you know what their expertise is, just try to go in that direction. And you're doing it all live, so it's not a science here, but you just have to, I guess after you do enough interviews, you kind of know what they like to talk about. Either you hear one of their answers and you seems like he likes to talk about that, so you kind of go in that direction more. Again, we only have so much time on the air, like 3 minutes, so you're not going to have a long time to figure this out, but you just do the best you can sometimes.
What about documentary? Because I know you've produced many documentaries, and so I would think the interview style might be different. You might let them go longer, because you might look for a specific soundbite versus I'm doing 3 minutes and this got to be concise.
Absolutely. Again, I still have to look at the raw video later and pick out the right sound bites, but certainly I'll let the interview go. If it's the main focus of the interview, I'll let them go, 25 minutes, half an hour, something like that. You just rather would have extra material to choose from, rather than say, oh, I should have asked that question, kick yourself later on that you didn't ask that question. So in that, it's a totally different animal, journalism, TV news compared to documentaries. For instance, this week we had Dave Matlin resigning or announcing his retirement. So one of our production assistants interviewed Rich Miano about the significance of Matlin retiring, and he basically just asked him 4 questions, and that was all we needed.
Wow.
It took about 3-4 minutes, and it was great because he got right down to it. It saves us so much time from having to look through all the raw, trying to find the right 15-20-second soundbite. Because in TV news, we just don't have time. We're always on that clock. We have to get ready for the 4, the 5, the 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock news. Documentaries, you can sit back and relax. And
So for those 4 questions,
Yeah.
the success of that, was it because the questions were like the perfect questions, or because the interview is like perfect? Or
Well,
maybe both?
honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised because, again, this was a guy who's only been working at our station for like about 6 months now, but he's a very bright kid, and he just knew basically, your reaction to Dave Matlin retiring. What do you think?
Yeah.
What is his legacy? What things could he have done better? Just questions
right beats.
the questions that would lead to a good soundbite that we could get on the air. So I told him, in fact, I said, Isaiah, you did a great job with that interview.
That's great.
I was very proud of him.
That's awesome.
So sometimes, you don't have to go sometimes real long to get the right soundbite as long as you ask the right questions.
What's a good question versus a not so good question? Like how do you get to the next level of asking good questions?
Well, I don't want to say there are dumb questions, I guess, bad questions, but again, in TV news, you want to go with just the basic stuff off the top, like, okay, the volcano. What do we need to know about this volcano? Are we in danger, or what do you expect of this volcano? Is it going to continue to erupt for a while?
How do you get them to speak in like full sentences? Because you ask them these questions, but they need to incorporate your questions, right, into their answer?
Well, most people, I don't know if they're media savvy enough. Most of them are. They know not to do 1 or 2 word answers. You don't want to set up your question so it's a yes and no answer. You want them to explain the situation for you. So part of it is the way you ask the question to have them answer properly.
And there's nothing worse than getting asked the same question. Like I was in an interview, and so I'd said something, and then the reporter comes back and asked me exactly what I just said, which was listening skills were not there.
Yeah.
So can you maybe tell us a little bit about listening skills? I know you're like really into that topic. And
Yeah, well, it's something I think people often overlook in making good interviews is that you don't listen to the person's answer, what he's trying to say or she's trying to say. Again, sometimes you're so, I don't know if you're nervous or too focused on the prepared questions that you're not willing to let your mind expand a little bit more and say, hey, maybe this might be a good way to follow this interview.
Yeah, because you got to follow the line, right?
Yeah. And I think that just comes with experience. I know when I first started, I wrote down every question I had, and I didn't want to stray from it too much.
Yeah.
But, as you get more experience, then you can relax a little bit more and really listen to the person and see what that person's trying to say.
And find the story, because the story might be in a place that you didn't think it was originally.
Yes, it could be. Yeah. Yep.
So recently, an icon of journalism and the interview passed away, Barbara Walters.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about why she was so successful because she was the interviewer, right?
Yeah. I've never met Barbara. Of course, I watched all her, specials, her celebrity interviews and things like that. I mean, just from reading the articles about her, the main thing about her was that she was just very aggressive. I mean, she would not take no for an answer. She knew tons of people. She knew how to get that interview. Even among her fellow colleagues at the same station, I mean, she didn't care about stepping on toes. She went after what she wanted. I don't know where that came from. She was just, again, a very aggressive-minded woman who would not take no for an answer.
But in her long-format interviews, I think she exhibits that principle of great listening skills.
She did, and she wasn't afraid to ask the kind of touchy questions too.
Yeah, nothing's off limits. I go right.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's how she, got her acclaim and popularity.
Helps to be a powerful interviewer.
It does.
Right?
It does. I don't know if I don't want to sound sexist here. I don't know if being a woman, she could get away with more things too. And if a guy had asked that same question, I don't know if the person she was interviewing might have been more hostile to her.
Well, speaking of hostiles, is there a difference in your perspective of how do you handle a celeb or a sports figure or, versus your common everyday man on the street?
Yeah. I mean, the guy on the street, he's not going to be used to being interviewed so much. So you might have to prep him a little bit more about, what you expect. Often they're nervous. So you'll say, look, this is what I'm going to ask you, just to make them feel more comfortable. People in like sports figures or politicians, they're a little bit more used to, they know
Sure.
what the drill is.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be so careful with them or, be so, what is the term I'm trying to figure out? Be nice to them in a way, right?
Yeah. You suck up to them. You don't need to do that.
No.
Well, and so what happens if somebody, like let's say the common everyday guy in the street,
Yeah.
deer in the headlights. What do you do to get him out of deer in the headlights?
Well, before you even get to that stage, you kind of, at least when I've been out in the streets, you kind of can tell who will make a good interview first. So before you stick that person in that situation, you kind of, get a feel of the room.
How can you tell?
Well, you can just be talking, like you get in the scene, you start talking to people, hey, what happened here, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody invariably will say, oh, yeah, this happened, this happened. So you kind of know, okay, this is the guy we go to, not the person who's acting all shy. So you kind of get a feel of the room that way. Again, just asking around and see who's the most articulate, who feels comfortable. Yeah, so.
What about for children? Because we always had our lemonade stand contest in station, and an adult would always go. That would typically be me, and I would speak for the kids. But I'd always try to throw it to the kids.
Okay.
And sometimes they really respond well. Sometimes they don't. But what do you do with kids in a studio to make them in an interview?
I don't know
great?
if there's kids are tough. Some, like you said, are happy to talk. Others are just like, they don't want to say anything. Again, you want to put yourself in the position where you ask them a question that's not a yes and no answer, something that they would feel comfortable answering. I think that's a whole big deal, is making them feel comfortable in the situation. You don't want to scare them and whatever.
What are your main tips to get someone comfortable?
Talk to them before the interview starts. Just let them know what you're about. Hopefully you give off a vibe that, hey, I'm your friend, we wanted to make you look good. We're on your side, you know what I mean? You're doing us a favor by helping us out here, and, so make them feel respected. Just make them feel like, we're all in this together type of thing. Yeah.
Well, for news, there's so much of this scary stuff. Something bad happens and the news goes and covers it. And so I can imagine people in a very mental traumatic state. Is that something that you have to really be kid hands, or how do you treat that type of condition?
Well, yeah, you try to be as sensitive as you can. Fortunately, I have not had to deal with that as much as some of our other reporters, because as you know, I mostly have been in sports for most of my career. And now as a news anchor, I'm mostly at the anchor desk. So I'm not out talking to someone whose relative just got killed or something like that. Those are very, very difficult situations. And I know a lot of our reporters hate being in that situation, because you feel like, you're being so insensitive about how do you feel,
Sticking your nose in when people are hurting.
Exactly. They're crying and everything else, and you don't want to feel like you're taking advantage of them.
Sure.
You're trying to do your job, but at the same time, you're trying to be as sensitive as you can to how they're handling the situation. So fortunately, not to say I don't know, but I really haven't been in that situation that often.
But the type of situations you've been in a lot are like the team wins the football championship and everybody floods onto the field. So how do you deal with that particular circumstance? Because I can imagine the sound is nuts and there's a lot of people around you and then everybody's bumping you. And, and the guy you're interviewing is about that tall.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you do in that circumstance?
Well, getting the answer isn't that bad. A large part of that is jockeying for position. I know in locker rooms before, you always, who the star of the game is, right? So you have to kind of not just camp at his locker, but you at least have to know where the locker is, because it's you and a cameraman. And
you tip the towel boy? It's
Oh,
Get me a spot, dude. Here's a 20.
Well, no, but you do. There is some strategy involved in knowing, okay, the guy's locker is over there. One eye is looking at that locker, and the other eye is watching what else is going on in the locker room to see who else you need to interview.
Yeah.
So if you get in the right position, then you can get that microphone up
Oh,
there.
interesting.
Yeah.
I imagine all the other reporters like, I'm watching Quan. I'm going to shout at Quan. Where he goes, I'm going there first.
Well,
He's making a move. I'm going there first.
Yeah. Well, everybody kind of knows what's going on in there. So
Is there a pecking order among reporters?
I don't know. I mean, in the Bay Area, it was kind of weird. As a sportscaster in the Bay Area, there's the print guys and then the TV guys. And the print guys always look down on the TV guys. They feel like we're just very shallow and we don't know all that much. So before the print guys would even ask a question, they let the TV guys ask their questions first. Because they didn't want to share their good questions with the TV people. So we do.
But super great if you beat them to the perfect question.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we get the first reaction too from the coach or the player or whatever. But I know, it's kind of an arrogance on their part. So we would do our interview, and then we'd leave the room, and then the newspaper guys would do their stories. But part of getting a good interview too is knowing the people, like the manager or the players. Typically, if they know you, again, that comfort level comes into play. They'll give you a better answer too. So I always try to, be friendly with the guys. You're not hanging out every day, but at least they know who you are, that you come to the games on a regular basis, and you care about them, and that you're not going to try to stab them in the back.
Yeah.
So there it is. How to Make a Great Interview by Rquan. Thanks for joining us, Rick. That
My
was
pleasure.
super cool. How do they find you if they want an interview done? Like maybe they want a docu produced or...
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can reach me at KITV. That's probably the easiest way.
Okay.
Rquan at KITV.com.
Right on.
I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. So
You're a Facebook fiend, man. You're all over that thing. Yeah. Watch him on Facebook. He's everywhere.
I'm always posting pictures of you on
Yeah, I know, right? But I mean, it is true. He eats everywhere around town. And sometimes I'm some of those shots, but there's a lot of food on Rquan's Facebook page.
I do enjoy food.
You do. We'll do that soon.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy. And for more on this show, behind the scenes, check out ID8studios.org. Thanks for joining us.